98% of Airbnb's that are live and listed, they're run by individuals who either use the house part-time or they only own one or two, but there's no one who's really like owning and creating market share in certain markets and really understanding what the ideal consumer or guest is looking for when they stay in these markets.
On today's episode, we're going to do all things Airbnb. Now, our guest has put together a portfolio of 85 Airbnb properties, which she manages, which she buys, which she underwrites, which she finds, and her team, of course. And we're going to talk about how to find them, how to manage them, how to do all these different things, and on top of it, how to invest in them passively so you don't have to actually do all those hospitality things that come with Airbnb. I'm super excited to host this session today because our guest is on fire. It's a young lady and she is absolute crushing it. So make sure you pay attention. Good. So you're in the short-term rental space, but you started as an Apple employee, right?
Yeah. So okay. Wild story, definitely a COVID baby business birth. I have a project management background. So I used to work in the tech space. I've always been interested in real estate. I started as a licensed sales person, like a licensed agent in New York, actually. I'm born and raised East Coast. Started there when I was like 20. And then I was like, man, this market's super cutthroat. So got into school, got into tech, kind of was doing my own thing. And then when COVID hit, my parents live in Arizona, so they live here. And I was like, you know what? I think I want to get into real estate. I think I'm going to start investing personally. I had been an LP investor in a couple of deals, but me buying my actual real estate and getting hands-on and doing all that was like the perfect COVID project because everyone was home. People were doing all sorts of home renovation projects. So I started that way. I got into the single family world. I bought a couple properties, and Apple has an internal investor group. Okay. And it's for people who only work at Apple that are full-time. Ironically, by accident, a lot of those people were accredited, and everyone was like, well, can you help me? And can you help me? So organically, I started building this little.
So you continued working for Apple, but you basically moved over here. And then lived at home again, right? And then this group of investors is like an officially endorsed or
it's
allowed,
just a hobby. It's like a hobby. People, same way that you have like an internal dog mom group. It's like people were just kind of like, hey, what's the interest rates? What's going on? Where do you buy? What are you investing in? And I was posting pictures of me furnishing my place, doing my own thing. People were really interested, and then I started hosting webinars internally. And that took its own route. A lot of people were really, really interested. And Airbnb just started picking up. You had a lot of people in investing in a lot of different type of assets. I think at the time, multifamily had just started to like explode. You saw a lot of people syndicating there. But no one was really doing it in the Airbnb space. And the cap rates were getting really slim in multifamily. And I was doing really well. So in my head, I was like, well, you have a lot of people doing build to rent. You have a lot of these private equity groups buying single family and renting them long term. Why can't I do the same thing? And if I underwrite for a long term rental, but it converts higher to a short term rental, I kind of, I'm kind of protected, right? Because if it doesn't work, then I could just get rid of the furniture and turn it into a long term rental. Right. So that was my mindset. And that's what I help people do. I just help them either convert their spaces or get into the STR space.
All right. So I like that. So what you just said is really important. So you basically underwrote it for long-term rentals. So let's say if the rental market gives on a house $3,000 a month, you underwrite it such that worst comes to worst, you can just simply take that thing and rent it out and it cash flows and everything is good. But obviously short-term rental brings more money, right? If you do it right, at least, right? So you basically said, well, let's do the short-term rental. And if for any reason I bomb, at least I don't have a catastrophic loss. So you protect your downside.
Correct. And that's how I evaluated my own risk as an individual investor. I was like, there's not really much room for loss here.
Yeah. And I love that because I see so many people out there, they're just going they're going for broke, right? They're going for moonshots. They're going for things. That's all good. But they don't protect their downside. And so they either go blow up or they crash, right? And with that model, I mean, if you have a cash flow driven model, it doesn't matter if prices fall by 50%. If rents continue to stay stable, it's all good.
Yeah, I think the only main difference there is how much cash are you putting up front.
Right.
I think furnishing an Airbnb can get really pricey.
It can. We have one.
Yeah, and it can get really pricey. People forget the details and the tiny things and the garbage bags and the pizza cutter and all these things that make the home an experience, not just a place to live. I also think the property that you buy, a great example is I helped an ex-Apple employee buy his first condo, and he wanted to just do Airbnb, and the condo sat in front of a big garbage disposal outside. And I was like, if that's an Airbnb guest, they're probably not going to really care because they're in and out of the house. If it's a long-term rental, they're really going to care.
Right.
So the property has to be able to function on both sides if you're going to underwrite the risk for both.
Yeah, makes sense. So did he buy it?
And they did really well.
Okay, but as short-term rental.
As a short-term rental.
So if he ever decides to rent it out long-term, then it's going to have a little bit of an issue.
Yeah, they're going to have to explain, hey, you're going to live in front of a garbage pail for a year.
Okay, yeah. I bet that do you have any information? Has that affected his ratings from the Airbnb people? Because they like to sit on a balcony too, and they don't like to necessarily look at the dumpster there. Or
the balcony's facing the other direction.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so then
it works.
That's good.
And everyone's kind of experienced that. You get an Airbnb and maybe you come to the front of the house and you're like, I think this is it. And then you get in there and you're like, oh, these are just like the pictures, or this is how it feels. But I think that's the gamble.
The horror stories come up when you think like it thinks like it looks, and then it's like, oh, the pictures were so much better than it actually looks.
Yeah.
So, but obviously you don't want to do that. Great. So then let's talk about, I mean, that's a big jump from technology to real estate. Or actually, you did the jump both ways first, right? You started in real estate and then you went into technology.
I don't think I'd credit my 20-year-old self like true real estate experience versus now. But yeah, I'd say the last 3 years, I really got in and I really started to learn, at least from the perspective of an investor and a business owner.
Right. But what was real estate always your love, or was technology just a means to an end, or both, or like? Walk me through your thinking there, because that's a big jump, and it's a big jump, because you said you started in New York with real estate. It's like, well, that's cutthroat. Let me go into technology then. That's a big jump, but then it wasn't the right thing for you, or just talk. What was your thinking behind it?
Sure. Yeah. So when I was 20, it was more like I just got to make ends meet, and I don't think at the time I had the grit for that hardcore sales personality that's needed in Manhattan to be able to handle like large ticketed volume, $3 million condos or people in that world. I just didn't have the right entryway to get my foot in the door to really network with those people. So that's kind of where I suffered. And I really just wanted to learn, and I wanted a career path. So I think tech was I was fit in the right place. I'm 29. So it was like the perfect time for me to learn something and grow with that wave, right? And so that's kind of what I did. And I got into it. I never thought I would stay into it long term. I think for me, it was like, get into something that you can make decent money in. And once you make that money, go start your own business. I always knew I'd be a business owner since I was little. Okay, actually, cool. Fun fact, when I was like 7, I gave my grandma $20 and asked if I could buy her house. I was like 7. So, my family jokes since I was like, okay, you basically have been in real estate since you were a kid.
7 years old. Now that's what I'm also asking, because I basically have a very similar background. I started in tech here, and I started in tech because that's what got me my green card. But then also, as soon as possible, we started something on the side. And once we had the green card, and that was real estate. So it's, but I never thought about it before. I didn't want to never considered real estate before I actually stumbled into it. But you had the plan in mind, was already, I want to start my own business, and you had an affinity for real estate, which is cool. So you make some money, you make some experience, you build up some confidence in life and so on. And then you started part-time during COVID, which also makes sense.
Yeah. And I think the transition happened super organically. I actually, when I came to Arizona, I came here to buy my property and then go back to San Francisco. And as I got deeper, I got my license here. I built a network here. And I think I came to a midpoint, like a fork in the road. And I was like, God, I see myself doing this more than what I am doing. But I felt really stuck because I was like, I make really good money at Apple. And that's what funds my real estate. Yeah. So I think that was actually where it turned into a business. I was like, okay, well, how do I keep myself alive? Like, what do I need to to live and, how do I keep a business that's long-term and sustainable? At the time, there were so many different discussions. Like people were betting against Airbnb because of what happened initially during COVID and, the market, the interest rates were coming down, and then there were rumors that they were coming up. So I took a lot of time to figure out what I wanted to do in this space. Yeah. I could have gone in many directions. Airbnb, the short-term rental business, there's so much meat on the bone to start a business that a lot of people try to do it all. And I explored many things, but I ended up going the fund route, and I'm happy.
So what do you mean by meat on the bone? Give me some examples. What are some of the different ways you can do this? I mean,
I know some designers who they're like a one-man band, and they're making some they're making seven-figure profit every year. They're doing really, really well, and they're just staying locally, staying in their market, and that's their business. They design homes.
Designing homes. Okay, so designing for. So you mean, well, I sometimes call those things crumbs. Basically, you have a core business, and then there's a whole bunch of world that caters to that world. So you mean the designers that help furnish and design these Airbnbs, and they charge a fee for it, and they're making 7 figures for it.
Yeah, and they do really well. So there's a lot of space. You can also get into property management and manage other people's homes. And you see a lot of startup companies now doing that. And again, they're very niche. So there's a lot of places where people can make money in the business. And I think getting really good at one thing in this is key, because unfortunately and fortunately, I like to use that word interchangeably, this is a very labor intensive business.
Yes. When we started, we have one Airbnb, or one short-term rental, I want to call it. Like it's mostly rented through Airbnb. It's up in Sedona, Arizona. And it's really, we wanted a weekend home, right? So we bought a house up there. We completely gutted it, remodeled it. But luckily, we had a designer/architect, a friend of us, who already has 2 houses that she short-term rents, and very, very good friends that already have 3 houses that they short-term rent. And basically, the architect helped us design the entire thing and furnish it. She literally sent us a list of stuff from Amazon and different companies to just go buy. So we're just like buy. We just bought and again, the little things that people don't think about, we wouldn't have thought about it, because this Airbnb has better stuff in it than we have in our own home now, right? So, and then the other friends, they're now managing it for us. So they're doing a fantastic job. So it's a true little gem up there. But when we got into that, we immediately realized we're leaving real estate and we're really entering the hospitality business. Right? Would you agree with that?
I think that's so. I'm so happy you said that, because I feel like I'm always teaching that, and right. There's a line in the sand that's drawn between Airbnb and multifamily.
Right.
It's not a rinse and repeat. I think that was a lot of people ask, like, what was the hardest thing about scaling your business? Because we're vertically integrated. So we raise all of our capital. That's a business in itself. We acquire all of our homes. That's a business in itself. We operate all of our homes internally, meaning we design, furnish everything in-house, and we manage. Oh, wow. So we're integrated. We're basically 3 businesses in one. And the hardest thing was to realize that each house is a little business, and you can't just throw a washer dryer and a backsplash and get a new operator like you would do with a 200 unit with multifamily and expect the same thing over and over again. I mean, right. These houses have quirkiness about them. A lot of Airbnb homes have converted spaces, so like a converted garage game room or a bedroom that acts as a 5-bedroom, but on resale, it might be different, right? So every house is so different. It's definitely hospitality. There's a service involved.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, right now I'm blown away. Like the friends of us that manage it for us, they're super hosts in all of their houses, and they're like hundreds of 5-star reviews. They think they've never gotten anything less than a 5-star review. And like the little details they're doing there is like, great. I'm glad you guys are doing this, because we're real estate investors. We're not necessarily hospitality masters or masters of hospitality, and we don't want to get into that. But so that's actually where your business comes in. Like you actually are the perfect match for people kind of like us, or people like that want to get into the short-term rental business, but don't want to become the owner of 25 little houses that basically together are more effort than running a hotel. Right? So let's go into your business model. Explain us your business model, how that works.
So we are a fund, and we like to offer a passive investment for people who want to diversify their portfolio and maybe get a taste of what short-term rentals are the easy way. So we're very data-driven. So we have a team internally that focuses on actually, we built our own software coming from a tech background. So my business partner also worked for Facebook. And when we started getting into Airbnb, we were like, gosh, how do we find markets to invest in? There were so many markets, especially single family. It's a way smaller investment than buying a hotel or a large building. So we created a software. It runs, every listing on the MLS in the United States. It spits out properties that numerically fit our pro forma and what we're underwriting for. And then obviously a human, our data team, comes in and analyzes all these homes. So what's a good space for a hot tub? Is there a room to remodel a kitchen or a backyard? And we look at the highest grossing homes on Airbnb, why they do really well. And we created a acquisition model that basically does that for our fund. So we buy properties in that sense. And then we have an entire operations team. I run everything operationally in the company that flies out to the properties. We do the inspection reports. We remodel every home. Every home has accent walls and artwork and themes. We have like a Barbie themed home. We focus on that part of the business. And then internally, we also have property management, and we manage our properties internally as well. So we're fully integrated. We're fully into, what is it called? Integrated. Vertically integrated. Sorry. And we do that. Everything from short-term rentals A to Z we do.
Wow, that's a lot of work. I imagine.
Yeah.
So how big is your team right now? I think something around 20-something people?
I think right now we're a little over 30 people.
Oh, 30. Very good. Very cool.
And we're
all local, or is it a virtual team?
So it's a fully remote team.
Okay.
Most of our team lives in San Diego, and we have a few people in upstate New York. We're kind of all over the place. We're in 10 markets right now where all of our properties are located, and we have around 85 properties.
Wow. Now, 10 markets, let's talk about that. So you mentioned that your team, the software that you created, basically gets a feed of of every single house on the market in the MLS in the United States, and then you pick based on the best markets. Now, do you select the 10 markets, or is it, what if you tomorrow get a deal in somewhere off the beaten path somewhere, but what looks attractive? Would you go there, or you strategically started one market, build a portfolio in each market, one market after the other?
No, so it happened organically. And again, this is what happens when you own a business that has so many different parts to it. It's like, what part of the business are you serving, right? It's like, so to diversify our fund, it's great to have many markets, but operationally, it's really hard to have many markets because you need a team in those markets, boots on ground, like every other part of real estate. And obviously, with economies of scale, things get cheaper, better, faster. So we start in markets if they deem viable. Sometimes we'll buy one or two and be like, how did that go? Did it go as well as we anticipated? Did it meet our underwriting requirements? Did it actually perform? And then we'll scale little by little.
Have you had cases where it didn't?
No, not so far. Nope. But that's because we have like 10 different checkpoints before we buy. Yeah. But we've gone into markets and we've realized that it's really hard for other reasons, not because of performance. So weather conditions, or maybe that market does really well in one part of the year and we don't love that. We've explored some very Christmas heavy markets, like just during the holidays, they're killer. But so they're for other reasons. We've tested things and decided maybe not to grow more. But our strongest markets right now are in Arizona and Florida and in the Northeast.
Okay, interesting. The Northeast, even though they have the cold weather up there.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of ski mountain resort towns.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, that makes sense because they actually have 2 seasons. Right?
Yeah.
They have the summer hiking season and the winter skiing season. Yeah, that makes sense.
Initially, when we started looking at markets, even without the software, we were like, because it was during COVID, we thought we like to be a 90-minute drive from a major city. Mm-hmm. So like New York City, 90 minutes, you have the Catskills, you have the Poconos. Scottsdale is like a new and up-and-coming city, similar like a Nashville. So that kind of had its own organic economic robustness that wasn't only vacation rental, at least the attractiveness for a vacation rental market. And then also you have other cities like West Palm Beach, you have the beach, you have other things. So Yeah, that's our goal.
That makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. You don't want to have a place like, for example, one of the downsides, and I don't know if we can talk offline perhaps a little bit more. I don't know if anyone is interested in that much, to know that much about our Airbnb up there, but Sedona is really low in summer for some reason, because even though, but that's perfect for us because that's when we want to spend time there. Because when it's 110 degrees here, I'm okay with 90 over there. But right now it's like nonstop. Like there's somebody left this morning, and an hour later the cleaning crew is there, which then brings me to the point of like, okay, so we have how many markets? 10, you said, 10 markets. So you have 10 sets with you have how many sets of cleaning crews do you have in each of these markets?
Is
there a ratio per number of houses or so?
It's not the number of houses, but it's the number of turns that a house gets and the size of the house. So like we have some cabins that sleep 15 people, and that requires like 2 turns for sheets and 2 sets of laundry for washer and dryer. So it depends on how big our houses are and what the houses serve. If it's a house for bachelor parties or for parties, the cleaning crews are more because it takes longer turns for each house. So it depends on the market. But we have several cleaning crews, not
so
just
the bachelor party houses. They're the ones that make you really popular in the neighborhood, right?
Oh yeah. We have pretty good relationships with our neighbors. At least our property management team does. So we like try and get their phone numbers. We're really honest about what we do. And we have rules, and we have our guests sign those rules. And we've never had anything happen in those houses that really have created that much chaos for our neighbors. But I think when people see that it's a short-term rental, obviously the first reaction is like, oh, yeah.
So good. So you built a relationship with the neighbors. You call them, and what do you tell them?
We say, hey, we're a company. We're doing short-term rentals. Here are our rules, and we just let them know. It's not really like a question for acceptance. It's just more like, hey, we're doing this, and keep an eye out. Or if there are any issues, let us know, and we'll try to mediate them immediately.
Okay, yeah, building a good relationship. It's important. Very cool. So now people can invest with you, right? So they invest, and it's 100% passive investment, right? So they basically need to read the terms of the things. But then, how does your fee structure? How do I get paid? What's kind of like the rules of the game there?
So it's a minimum of $25,000 for the investment, and we distribute quarterly. Mm-hmm. We have no fees upfront. And how we get paid is because we're vertically integrated, we have, a small acquisition fee, or we have a project, like how we do our design and all that, construction, all that. We take a small fee from each house.
Mm-hmm. Right, and then I assume there's a management fee, et cetera, so equivalent. So then what do they typically make, these houses?
In terms of the return?
Yeah.
Anywhere between a 7 to 12%.
Okay. That's pretty good. Now, if you ever sell these properties, are the investors participating at the profits if the market has gone up, let's say?
Correct. So at the sale or at a refinance, we expect a distribution as well.
Okay, cool. That's an interesting model. And now this is not restricted only for accredited investors, right? Or is it only accredited investors?
It's not restricted to accredited investors.
Okay, very cool. So right there is an opportunity for non-accredited investors to participate in the Airbnb space, and doing it without actually having to carry all this extra thing. Because as we are realizing, like, as I said, I'm thanking God for our friends and for our architect friend that helped us staff the thing. There's stuff in that kitchen that I don't even know how to use. Right? So, and how to really make everything. There's a guest book in there. There's like, we're recording YouTube videos on how to do certain things, so people can just simply go on a YouTube channel when they're in our house and just go watch instructions on a few things, like how to operate the washer and dryer, where to find the rice cooker, right? Because it's actually underneath the countertop in the kitchen, or underneath the island where the bar stools are. You have to move them and go in there, because not everyone uses a rice cooker. It's like crazy kind of stuff. I would have never thought about it. But if you have the right team in place, they'll do it for you. And that's what you guys do. Apparently very, very successful.
Yeah, there's so many details. I think when we first started, a lot of people, they were like, well, we can just do it ourselves. And we're like, we actually go encourage that because I think once you start, a lot of our investors actually have homes and have Airbnbs, and they're like, man, we love our house. It was a great learning experiment, but like, we'd rather just do this passively just because it's just so much work.
So you encourage it? You say like, yeah, go try it.
Yeah, we're like, go try it.
And then they'll come back anyway afterwards. That's smart.
Unless you love hospitality or unless you have the time. Like there are some people that just have the time, but it's not even a full-time job. It's a full-time job for like 10 people.
Right.
So it's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. I know. So really amazing. I mean, you're at a young age jumping into that and finding the model and implementing, executing the model. I mean, that's humongous. Now, setting up that fund. Let's talk just a little bit about that. So now, don't have to go into too much detail, but that's a pretty big endeavor, right? So how did you go about that? Did you try this yourself? Did you go, obviously you probably need an attorney for it, but you coming from another city, no network here, how do you go about setting something like that up?
So my business partner, who's not with us today, he had recently raised capital for another fund. So he had a background in this, not only raising capital, but just fund structures, how to start, the right legal attorneys, working with, making sure that you're not dancing around the SEC and you're working in compliance with all those details. So he had that background, which I'm grateful for because it was a great partnership to get into. I had the operational background. He had, knowledge of fund structure. It was just through relationships that we had with investors and, well, more so with peers through work. Mm-hmm. And then slowly we started through word of mouth, through referral, and then a little bit of ad spend, we got our word of mouth.
Apparently very successful because 85 houses raised how much money? Last thing I read was like 22 million or 30 million or something.
So we're at $37.5 million.
$37.5 million. That's fantastic. Now, have you seen any slowdown right now with the economy where we are? We're doing like early 2023. People still funding money like the way it was 2 years ago, or have people been pulling back a little bit?
No, so we haven't experienced any slowdown. I think it was just timing and how everything else was doing in the market. I mean, the stock market was interesting the last year. I know a lot of people lost money there. Same with crypto and other assets. So I think we were doing well. We were on a climb, and Airbnb. There were some rumors about Airbnb bust, but Airbnb's been doing really well, at least their growth. So I think it was just right timing, and people were looking to replace their money.
Particularly if you're bad, so that it's very smart again, or lucky or smart. Well, there's no such thing like luck, right? You put yourself in a position to actually be lucky, right? And you put yourself in a position of being in Silicon Valley, of having a lot of IT money. And obviously, when the stock market goes down, that IT money wants to move their money somewhere else, which obviously you're the benefactor of, which is fantastic, right? Yeah.
I think if anything, we were just, we offered a good opportunity, and that's what people were looking for. They were looking for cash flow opportunity, and there wasn't many of that. There wasn't that many solutions for that at the time. Also, it's not like it was something new. It was real estate, and it's something that's been around for a while. And
something sexy, Airbnb. Plus, at that point, you already have a track record because you already shown it works. So yeah, it's a perfect combination. It's like it's a safe place. Yeah, makes total sense. So let's talk about the market a little bit. So what do you think is going to happen in the market? Like, is Airbnb like over the last couple of years, especially during COVID? First, obviously, COVID hit. Everyone was like, "What happens? Everything's going to be empty." But then people realized that if they're stuck at home, they might as well take their family, go to an Airbnb, right? Because again, instead of a hotel room, they have now the entire house, and they can work from home. And instead of working in their 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartment, they can go rent an Airbnb for 30 days and stay there. So Airbnb started blowing up. But the next thing that happened, at least in the markets that I looked at, is now everyone turned their house into an Airbnb. Do you see any of that when you're referring to in certain markets, certain things, the Airbnb bust? Is there anything you see about that, or what do you think is going to happen in the future here?
So if we're just talking about purely Airbnb and that trajectory, there's
not just the Airbnb, the company. I'm talking about the the short-term rental as people use it. That I hear lately, a lot of people in certain markets, again, where we have our house, in a neighborhood, we have our house, every other house is an Airbnb. Every other house is a short-term rental. And people are complaining that their occupancy is substantially lower now than it was a couple of years ago. Because not everyone is traveling anymore, because some people are back in the office, but also you have twice as many options to choose from now. So it's got to affect occupancy at some point of time. What do you see on that?
Yeah. So, and I think that's what I was referring to about the Airbnb bus. So I think when we started the business, when we looked at the industry as a whole, I think, and I can't be 100% quoted to this because it's been a year, but at the time it was like 98% of Airbnbs that are live and listed, no matter what duration of the year, doesn't matter if it's part-time, full-time, doesn't matter. They're run by individuals who either use the house part-time or they only own one or two, but there's no one who's really like owning and creating market share in certain markets and really understanding what the ideal consumer or guest is looking for when they stay in these markets. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the times you have plenty of saturation and competition, but it's not someone offering the whole product at what a guest that's coming into that market and what they're looking for when they stay there. For an example, again, we're led by data, so all of our homes offer all the amenities that people look for when they come to that market. We have the right photography. We know how to create listing descriptions that are created from a company perspective. So, and we also own a lot of the homes in that market. If you were to look up Scottsdale for Super Bowl weekend, most of our properties are booked already. But if you were to just take a snippet of a calendar time frame, you will see probably 10 of our listings, and they all come up first. So Airbnb has its own search ranking similar to SEO. It's in Airbnb. They're favored for many different variables, for pricing, for the number of clicks that people, the traffic, the clickbait, the amount of guests that are looking at photos of each listing. So we rank high. So us personally, if anything, our revenue has gone up, but we also know what we're advertising.
You're basically saying, yeah, there's competition. You just got to be better than the competition.
You just got to know what you're offering, and you got to know what people are looking for. Like every season in our seasonal markets, like we're not offering pictures of snow in our properties. We change all of our photos to show fall leaves or summer, and those get booked the highest. I'm not offering a pool in the Poconos with beach chairs. I'm offering a hot tub, a sauna, warm towels, a place to hang your skis, and we change our photos, in that change of season, so that we keep ranking high. I mean, there's so many little strategies that come with owning a home, but again, we do it as a company.
Did you just learn those strategies little by little, or?
I think little by little, and then obviously looking at other properties who do really well. But now we comp to those who do really well, like at the 95th percentile, but we also comp to our own at this point. Mm-hmm. I've A/B tested many of our own homes. Like, okay, I'm going to redo a bathroom in this one. It's the same exact floor plan as the other one. I'm going to save $11,000 on this one, and on this one, I'm not going to renovate. And I am going to renovate it. I'm not going to renovate it. They both produce the same revenue. Next time, I'm not going to renovate the bathroom. So we've changed our strategy with time, but we're always data forward. Another thing too is that Airbnb, the typical Airbnb investor, it's an accident. My wife is going to design it, and we're going to use it.
They're just like.
But it's very emotional. Yeah. We are not emotional at all. We look at data. We look at the numbers. We look at amenities. We execute on those amenities. We list, and we're very we fine tune our revenue based on if there's any room to be better, or if we can leave it as is and it's performing to what we thought it would be. And that's how we look at our business. But Airbnb is very emotional.
Yeah.
In general.
It is because it's like their mom's house or their sister's house or their former home, and it just kept, and now the tenant moved out. Oh, let's just try Airbnb. So they put like some leftover furniture that I have something in there, and it just doesn't all look well put together, right?
But it depends on, so when we look at Airbnb, I also think that there's so many different types of properties. Like I know a girl who owns a house that's shaped like a potato in Idaho, and she built this potato by herself, and she does really well doing it. and I'm not going to go build a potato, right? Like that's her little baby and she does really well, but we're a business. So there are people who have tree houses and tiki huts and igloos and they do really well. But we have a very specific thing that we buy. We buy 4 to 5 bedrooms. We buy, this size property with this size yard in these markets. And that's our bread and butter. And that's our consumer too.
Any interest in going into these more experienced kind of places?
Not at the moment because that's not scalable. And that's what we kind of focus on, scalability. That's actually what we do really well at operationally. And that's what a lot of other businesses can't do in the space is to scale. So not at the moment, but it's always fun. I appreciate it. I look at some of these houses. I'm like, wow, you killed it. I don't know how that's totally out of my realm to focus on the little things like that.
Yeah. The other day I came across an ad for a company that basically, and we do land, like we're in real estate, we do land flipping. We flip pieces of land. So we own a bunch of land right now. And I always own a bunch of land as we buy some, sell some and so on. And this company, what they do is they basically take your land and they put those glamping kind of places on it, and then they manage it for you. So I was like, I might be interested. I'll need to reach out to them one of the next few days to just see if they're interested in any of our pieces of land. But then they're still doing the work. I would be the passive investor providing the land for it. But they apparently do this at scale. So I can't figure out how, because some of these properties are a little bit further outside, and getting a cleaning crew out there must not be very easy.
I actually looked into that individually before I started the company. I looked into doing some rental arbitrage stuff, like buying a couple Airstreams or RV campers, because going up to Williams, which is a couple miles from the Grand Canyon, I was going to buy a piece of land. And then I was like, well, maybe I can rent the land and, put the ADUs on top or, the glamping kits and all that. And then I decided, I was like, oh my God, so much work. Well, only if you're dealing with weather, it makes it 10 times harder.
Right.
Utilities and, it's not as easy as people make it seem.
That's right. Better to have the house there in place. Good. Now, in terms of at the end of the day, what's your exit on those? What's your plan? To build this up to $1 billion worth of real estate, to build it up to a certain number, to sell it, and how does the current market conditions where actually prices of houses going down play into your calculations?
Yeah, so I think when we started the fund, our first fund, our goal was to hold it for 5 years. It was our whole time. Obviously, we have the best interest for our investors, and if 5 years doesn't make sense, at that point we could be like, hey, we should hold on to this, look at the market, and kind of reflect at that point. But that's our goal, and I say that because I think a lot of people are in the same boat. Like they get into investing now and they're like, well, I'm either going to refi in hopes that the interest rates go down, or I'm going to, if things get rocky on year 3, 4, 5, then I'm going to hold, right? Like everyone, as you should, owning real estate. So I think that's our plan. This last year, our first fund we landed at $37.5 million. And we just opened our second fund, and our goal this year is to do 3 times the amount of that. So we're aiming for, anywhere from 100, 150. And we think we can get around there. Our goal is to have multiple funds. So that's kind of an open-ended response, but that's what we're aiming for. And we're focusing on shorter hold times.
Okay, sure.
So 5 years still in that range. I'm just saying shorter than,
so the goal is actually to then sell the properties at that time.
Correct. Okay. And exit, hopefully, from a portfolio perspective.
Oh, okay. All right. Go sell it to another operator or somebody else.
Yep. Or a private equity group or someone. And we're going to, the goal is to sell it at a cap rate. So to look at it from a commercialized point of view, from an institutionalized point of view, rather than an individual asset.
Now, since you had some exposure to multifamily, I want to just take it in that direction. So one of the things that are being discussed, and we own a bunch of multifamily, so one of the things that's being discussed in the multifamily space is taking portions of a multifamily property and also converting that into short-term rentals if the location is proper. And some people that I know are getting some good results on that. Have you considered that, or what's your thoughts on that?
So just because we're focused on the fund, we're just focused on single family. We've thought about purchasing some smaller, like below 6 units, like that's like smaller type deals. And we've entertained smaller projects because they've been very well located. But our bread and butter are these larger homes. And for many reasons, obviously from the numbers point of view, but also if you look at Airbnb, again, there's many different types of like asset classes within Airbnb. But with Airbnb, you know, if because there's always this argument like hotels are coming back, Airbnb is coming back. Like there's this, you know, conflict. And we like 5-bedroom, 4-bedroom homes because they invite groups, and it's so much more economically friendly for a group to rent a house rather than like 3 separate rooms at the Ritz-Carlton.
Right.
So we focus on that. We feel like there's a market demand there, and that's our little niche. I know a couple people that have worked in the multifamily space at scale, and they've said, "Hey, I'm going to do 10% of my units. I'm going to, you know, put them on Airbnb," and they've done corporate rentals, and they've done like the Sonder. I don't know if you know what Sonder is, but they do that kind of format. It's like a corporate rental website. The 30-day, the midterm rentals,
or the traveling nurses, or insurance rentals. Basically, if somebody's house burned down, they need to be relocated somewhere, and so on.
So we've explored it. I mean, I think it's great if you're in a metro market like Dallas, you know, or you could even, you know, you could take 10% of your portfolio and rental arbitrage it to one of these, you know, YouTube arbitrage stars and have them do it for you. But yeah, there's I think there's money there. I can't say on which markets, but I've explored it in the past, and I know it's working for people.
Okay, cool. So right there, some things that people can do. We're considering in one of our properties, a little bit more in the Northeast, next to a very large military base. So it attracts a lot of the parents for like graduations and parenting, whatever. I don't know. I haven't been obviously in the American military, so I don't know exactly. But my understanding is there's a lot of people come and basically spend time visiting on the weekends with their soldier family members. And but we're probably going to take that slowly and easily, because there's also some considerations with a loan there, because the lender may or may not allow it. So we're currently exploring that. So obviously you're doing something right here and have done this really well planned out. Obviously, if you work for Apple, you got to be smart, right? We know that, right? And if your partner worked for Facebook, it's the same thing. You guys have created something really, really amazing there. So congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
So with that said, guys, make sure you give us a 5-star review on iTunes. If you listen or watch this on iTunes, make sure if you're watching this on YouTube, you give us a thumbs up, you hit that subscribe button and also the notification button. And with that said, there's many more episodes to come. See you there.